Hello and welcome. I want to take a minute to go over this amazing console that we will be using so that you get the best experience during the webcast. This console is fully customizable. You can reshape, resize, and move all of the windows. The widgets for today's webcast are the presenter slides and media player, where you will view the webcast presentation. We have the Q&A to ask questions that the presenters will be answering throughout the webcast. The speaker bio will give you information on the speakers and links to contact them. And in the resources, you will find all of your goodies like your slides, your handouts, and your giveaways. The group chat is where you will chat back and forth with the other attendees. And if you want to tell somebody about this great webcast, but you don't want to leave and miss a thing, that is not a problem, because we have a suite of social media icons to choose from, so you can tweet and post about this webcast. You can even invite a friend with the Refer a Colleague widget, and you never have to leave the platform. The Help widget will open a new window to help you with technical difficulties that you may experience, and the survey will be used at the end of the webcast to let us know how we did, what we can do better, and topics that you would like to see in the future. To clean up your console for better viewing, simply click on the widget for the window that you would like to close. As a few last details, please remember to sign out of or disable all of your pop-up blockers. This is an audio broadcast, so to get the best sound quality, all of the sounds for this webcast should be coming directly through your computer. We are recording and you will be receiving a copy, but you will want to stick around for the live Q&A and special offers at the end. We are excited to have you here today. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy this opportunity to mastermind with your Originator Connect network.
Well, hello and welcome everybody once again to the Originator Connect Network online webcast forum. We've got a great program for you here today with a couple of special guests, a couple of experts in the field of digital marketing and how to integrate and connect with your audience. We all know the can you hear me now effect and how noise overload and information oversaturation make it that much more difficult for us as mortgage professionals to truly connect and stay in touch with our past customers. So today's topic is all about that issue. How do we break through the noise? How do we connect with our customers and still create value and relevance to be able to connect and serve the needs of those customers? Today, we've got a couple of guest speakers that I'll introduce you to in just a second, but I also want you guys to remember that this is intended to be more of a discussion, more of an interactive experience for all of you to be able to ask the questions. We want to know more about you and who you are so we can tailor our presentation and conversation with you to those specific needs. So to that end, we're going to use the two main features here are the Q&A. As these guys are presenting, as they're sharing ideas and thoughts with you about ways you can connect with customers through text messaging better, these guys go ahead and post those questions in the Q&A. That's where you really want to get into the deeper asking of the technical elements of how to do this. You also have the opportunity to chat with your peers, share success stories that you've had in this type of a marketing strategy, as well as any additional questions that you would like to hear from your peers around the country as to what their thoughts are. So without further ado, let me introduce for just a second while I post some of these poll questions to get to know you guys a little bit better and who you are. Our first presenter is Mr. Taylor Cutler, who is the digital marketing manager for Podium. By the way, Podium recently got some great kudos for Forbes magazine that named them the next billion-dollar startup and how that's disrupting the communications and marketing industry. Taylor has been with Podium's marketing team and driving demand through paid marketing channels such as Google, Facebook, and industry-specific publications. Taylor received his Bachelor's of Science in Digital Marketing with a minor in digital media from Utah Valley University. In his free time, he joins skiing in Utah, the greatest snow on earth as much as possible, obviously. Trevor Cook is their Senior Regional Sales Director, specific to the mortgage area. Trevor and I have gotten to know each other a little bit over the year or so that we've been working together. And his primary job is with this as a service, as a sales platform to help businesses interact with customers through text messaging and SMS messaging, influence purchase decisions, streamlining the collecting and management of online reviews and data. Of course, his favorite thing to do is watching University of Utah football. So as we go through these poll questions and as these guys kind of introduce themselves, go ahead and let us know who you are so we can understand how best to tailor the conversation to you. First question we popped up was, how long have you been in the industry? Looks like we've got a pretty good representation here. Looks like about most of you are 7+ year veterans, over 13 years, 59% of the audience today. So you guys are seasoned originator veterans here. Second question is, what's your role in the industry? Are you frontline origination or operations, or do you look in more of a senior leadership and management role? Go ahead and let us know, just so we know who you are. Of course, it looks like about 94% of you are frontline salespeople. That's awesome. You're exactly the audience that we're driving towards today. The last question is, how are you using texting today in your business communications? Give us a flavor for how aggressively are you communicating with your customers through their mobile devices. All right, and let's pull up the poll results on that. Looks like 100% so far of the responders. And by the way, keep filling in if you want to, guys, fill in the rest of the information for us. Anybody else using your personal cell phone to respond when customers are texting you directly? No additional automation, no proactive marketing so far. So wow. Hopefully you guys are going to learn a lot today. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Taylor and Trevor, who are going to walk you guys through a couple of key things you need to know about how to connect with your customers through their mobile phones. Taylor,
Thanks,
Trevor,
Eric.
take it for it.
Yeah. So we're super excited to be on here today. Looks like we have a lot of people that are really experienced and have been in this industry for a long time. So we're hoping that from today's presentation, you'll be able to take some things away that you might not have known before. It's for you, right? That, hey, this is something that I can change, and these are some things that are very actionable, right? Every webinar we do here at Podium, they're not meant to be just something that you think, at a high level, hey, that's nice, maybe if I had this or that, or if I had this type of marketing person helping me out, that I could institute that benefit. But rather, these are things that after today's presentation that you can do today, right? These are things that you can go ahead and go back to your sales team, right, and say, hey, we need to be doing this, this, and this. So hopefully you guys can take away some of those things. So like Eric said, I do digital marketing here at Podium. I mostly work with helping get demand into our sales team, right? So I'm focusing on getting leads. That's all I'm thinking about every day, right? How can I get more people in the door and increase our bottom line? And I'm sure that's something that you guys are thinking about constantly, right? So let's go over the agenda of what we'll be talking about today. So first, we're going to talk about why businesses today are adopting text messaging at an unprecedented rate, right? What is driving businesses to be using that, and how are they being successful? We're going to talk about how to get you started with text messaging, and not so much just on your cell phones, right? Like that's what we're all going to be used to, right, Trevor? Is that most of us who have been smart and know that we want to reach our customers and get more people to respond back to us, know that playing phone tag doesn't work, and that text messaging is important. And so it looks like we from what we saw in that poll question that everyone already kind of understands that. And so that's a really good thing that we know. So we're going to talk about how to get you started, like on a larger scale with text messaging and how to implement that right. And then we'll talk about the top tips of using text messaging to improve the customer experience, right? How you can actually make your customers more happy by using text messaging, and not just to help you, but actually to help your customers. So let's move into this. So your customers really, really want to text you, right? That's the number one thing driving this text messaging rates going up, right, with all these businesses using it. 89% of customers want to use text messaging to communicate with businesses, right? Yet not very many businesses are actually implementing that today, right? Now, 48% of people prefer SMS text messaging over other messaging platforms. And obviously this last stat's not very surprising, but 97% of American adults text weekly. Now, the reason I like that last stat there is because we'll talk to people a lot about, hey, you really need to get on texting, and you really need to start communicating with your customers that way. And they're like, oh, well, I have such an older customer base, right? And, they're not using text messages, I have to talk to them on a phone. And while that might be true with some cases, but 97% of American adults, and I can tell you every single one of my grandparents are texting right now, right? And that's probably the oldest demographic. And with, especially with mortgage space, you tend to see younger people, right, that are buying homes rather than these older people.
Yeah. Kind of on this one, guys. We know that, especially from those results that you guys sent in, a lot of people are already catching on to this vision that texting is the here, it's the now, it's this digital age we live in. It's what these consumers prefer. But the key thing with this is we're actually trying to accommodate what texting can really mean to your business. And by accommodation, instead of just using, a kind of a typical one-to-one cell phone approach with your personal cell phones, we want to find out easier, better ways that we can help anybody looking to text their clients, and do so in a way that's going to keep them ahead of the game. Because, you guys know it's a demand now. We can clearly all see that, and we're pretty much along the same page, given your guys' feedback on that initial survey. But what we find is that many companies don't necessarily understand which direction they want to go to better put themselves in a position now to make texting scalable and more effective for their clients. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, is what you guys can do now to take advantage of some helpful best practices that put you in a better position to communicate with your clients in a text message way. And then most importantly, kind of prepare for this, kind of what we talk about, our CEO talks a lot about, this big wave of more and more consumers. If we think how relevant this is today, imagine how relevant texting is going to be, a year from now, 2 years from now. And so we want to get you guys in a place to really start taking advantage of this big wave that's coming, that our CEO talks about all the time. And that's going to be one of the big focuses here as part of this presentation.
Awesome. So let's look at this next slide we got here. So, and this is something that I'm sure you guys are all already aware of, right? But businesses that aren't accommodating to these, changing consumer communication preferences will be left behind, right? So let's go back to, the year like 1900, right? Or maybe even in the 1890s, right? And you're a business owner, and they come out with this thing, Alexander Graham Bell comes out with this thing, said, the telephone, right? And you can talk to anyone across the country from a phone line, and they say, hey, we have this new communication, strategy where you can talk to anyone through a phone line. And this is great. You should start, posting your phone number and get a phone, right? And communicating with your customers that way. And then, you have a business owner say, oh, that's crazy. How could I ever talk to somebody that's somewhere else and not be there in person, right? That's actually crazy. I'm not going to use that, right? Well, you can probably guess that a business like that would not be in business today, right? And that's how it is with every single thing, with email, right? And obviously now text messaging, is that if you're not accommodating to these preferences, and it's not just text messaging, right? It's also Facebook message, Instagram message, right? Communicating through any of these messaging platforms is vital, because everyone has a different preference. And if you're not accommodating, you're going to get left behind, because other businesses will, right? Specifically your competitors.
Yeah, and one thing kind of got on this slide, one thing that's pretty obvious, and I think, again, we're probably all on the same page here, but just to reiterate why consumers want to text, it really boils down to this whole idea of convenience. You guys know that the demands of consumers, especially in that millennial category, they are constantly changing. And, most of them use texting in their social environment every single day. I always ask people, I'm like, how do you communicate with the 3 most important people in your lives? And it's interesting to get so many responses where they're like, well, yeah, I use texting on a regular basis. People essentially just, where they can avoid anything that's going to take more time, such as a phone call, or, anything to inquire about basic information, anything that's going to cause more barriers to them getting more accomplished and being able to multitask. Texting is really what avoids those barriers, and it solves that ease of use factor. And so, these bullet points are pretty common sense, but just to reiterate, it does make it easier and less intrusive than other channels. Obviously saves time and can eliminate, phone tag in certain situations. And I think we can all relate to this if we put ourselves in our own kind of consumer experiences with other companies we work with. And I just talked to my wife last night. She reached out to Comcast, and she had to make a call. She was waiting on hold the whole time before she could get a hold of a representative. And she compared that to her experience working with T-Mobile, which is another service that we use. And she does all of her back and forth communication with T-Mobile all via text message to answer questions. And she just raves about how much she loves it because she's also taking care of 4 kids at home and trying to tackle everything else. So it is convenient for your consumers. But then it's funny because we can talk about how much more convenient it is for you guys as as a loan officer or lending scenario where you guys are dealing with so much. You can multitask and make your lives a whole lot easier with this texting kind of format.
Yeah, Trevor really hit it on the head right there. It's a win-win scenario for consumers and businesses, right? Yep. Because text messaging has every aspect we would want, right? First aspect is that people don't expect text messages to be responded to immediately, right? Right. It's totally the culture to, get that text message, and digest the information and respond, within, 15, 10 minutes. Even if it's within an hour, it's not that big of a deal. Whereas if you're on a live messaging, like tool, like I don't know if anyone remembers, using Hotmail, right? Instant Messenger. I remember coming home from school and running to the computer and trying to message my friends as fast as I can, right? And if somebody doesn't respond to that immediately, it's a problem, right? And so if people see that you're not responding in a channel like that, they get angry. But this is a channel where, hey, you can take your time a little bit more, right? But it also saves you so much more time because you're not trying to play that phone tag. And also just a conversation takes time from you and your customers and getting those lines all tangled up. Whereas, you can respond to tons of text messages so much faster, especially if you have a platform that's able to do that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's a win-win scenario for both the consumer and the business. Now, if this is done right, it is so much more effective, right? And these are 2 stats that are huge, right? So 99% is the open rate for text messages, right? And if any of you are familiar with marketing, if you compare this to email, the average open rate for email and for a good email is about 20%, right? And that's a fantastic, you're pretty excited as a marketer if you're getting, all of your emails open at, that average 20% rate. But the other stat here is that 90% of those messages, right? So of all those messages open, 90% are open within the first 3 minutes. So that means people, are always prepared. So let's give an example, right? Everyone pull out your cell phone right now, right? I'll pull out mine and just take a look. I guarantee probably at some point in this presentation, you'll open and respond to a text message, right? So I'm going to look at my emails. So I have, let me count. Let's see here. I have 13. So I have 26 unread emails, and I really have to stay on top of my emails because I work with all these publications that have these email lists, and I have to make sure it's not my own marketing going out, right, and making sure that it looks good. So I'm actually usually really on top of my emails. My director over there, I'm looking at him right now through that window. He has 50,000 unread emails, right? Yeah. So if you're trying to communicate with your customers, right, and they might even be expecting through email, it's just that much harder to get in communication because they have all of that clutter. Whereas, look at your phone right now. I have 0 unread emails. Unread text messages. I don't know how many do you have, Trevor?
Yeah, I'm a pretty much 100% on that side of things. So I do a really good job keeping up to speed on that.
Right. So it's just that much more open, right? Like everyone's ready.
And I think just to Taylor's point there, one thing that's important to point out is if they're not responding to a text from a client perspective, to Taylor's point, with that kind of open rate, they're reading the text, right? So there's still dialogue that's happening and there's consideration on the client side. But it's also that convenience that they might get back to you a little bit later. But I think we can rest assured that, hey, at least they're reading my messages. And there's actually some ways that, there's some ways to facilitate and track that process, knowing that your clients are reading the messages behind some of the ways that we can track that from a capability standpoint that we can get into a little bit later. But let's move on to kind of this, along this segue with what Podium users who text their customers can really plan on here. One of the first key statistics that were pretty eye-opening when we started to really dive into the analytics behind what our clients were experiencing when they started implementing a textable solution was 77% feel customers are more satisfied texting with a business, this is a really big one. Okay, this is a question that I started asking a lot of my clients. I'm like, hey, who right now are you, texting with from a business standpoint? And based on who they told me about, I said, does it make you feel like there's more of a kind of an intimate, like satisfaction perspective? We know that like getting feedback and measuring, you guys have heard of Net Promoter Score, NPS feedback. I know that's really big in the mortgage space. Texting is really a way to help build that relationship with your clients, where there's actually more trust and influence in that customer to business relationship. So that's a really big one that we hit on a lot. The other one that's interesting is 67% feel they're developing more positive customer relationships. So it really builds upon this concept that most people want to find better ways to find a good, easy relationship with their client base. And it's amazing how 2 or 3 text messages, just by you responding that way, can make your clients feel more trust and more confidence in who they're working with. The last and kind of I think probably more applicable statistic in my perspective is 5 hours average time savings per week. So we have a ton of case studies here on our end. We've got a large client base that we work with to help utilize their ability to text their clients. And one thing that has come across with the case studies we performed is that more people talk about the time saving and the way they can free up more time with their day-to-day work hours. We know how busy loan officers are. We know you guys have a ton on your plate, and if you're doing texting in the right way and making that scalable with your large client base, this is going to free up more time and make you guys a lot more efficient.
Yeah, this really honestly makes it so you can get more work done, right? Because it cuts out that time consuming thing of trying to call people, not having them answer and going back and forth, right? And that's why we see those numbers of the 77% of Podium clients who started, text messaging with their back and forth, their customers felt that their customers were more satisfied, is because it's just much more convenient for your customers, right? People are in meetings all day, right? For example, I'm actually in the market for a home right now, and it is the biggest pain in the ass when I get a phone call and I'm in the middle of something and I have to answer a lot of my phone calls, right? Because I'm talking with all these different people all day long, and it's just frustrating when I get that phone call, from one of these mortgage companies saying, hey, let's talk about getting this funded, right? And if they sent me a text message, I'd respond to it, right? Even if I was in a meeting, if I was in this webinar right now when Trevor's talking,
Yep.
I can text back, and so your customers are going to feel so much more convenient with that. I got a message from Eric saying, hey, I can help you with that loan. So thanks, Eric. But the main point is the main reason why consumers, what's behind all of this is the fact that we live in a convenience economy, right? Today, consumers have been conditioned by Amazon mostly, right? But a lot of online purchases being made, right, through all these different platforms are so easy, where all they have to do is one click and something shows up their house 2 days later, and that's it, right? They don't have to enter any payment information. So we've been conditioned by these sites, by these e-commerce sites, to be just so used to this convenient process that now we're starting to apply that to offline businesses, and this is especially affecting the mortgage industry, right? And we're competing with Rocket Mortgage, right, where people are doing it straight through an app. So, we have to be that convenient to be able to stay in with the game.
Yeah. So, guys, as we get into some of the best practices and things that we have seen that work really well, both on the kind of loan officer level from like branch managers, up through the corporate side, and ways to implement a successful texting kind of process. We would love to maybe stop here.
Yeah, let's answer some questions.
And just answer some questions before we get into that. So
Eric, I'm going to read some of these questions off. So let's see here. Is it okay to mass communicate through text? How does that work with the do not call list laws? Okay, that's a great question right here that we got. And I'm sure we both can answer this. So first thing I want to say is that using text messaging, right, there is text message marketing, and there are ways to do that. But the primary reason you want to be texting is to be communicating, right? Having a back and forth conversation with your customers. This is not something you want to blast. And the reason why is because we have the Can Spam Act, which includes TCPA laws, right? If you're just texting out all of your customers like an offer or something like that, that's marketing, that's a big no-no, and that can really get you blacklisted real fast. Yeah. So you want to mostly be using this for conversations, right? Now, I'll let Trevor talk a little bit more about this, but I'll kind of cover later how you can do that, but it's completely different.
Yeah, I'll just add that we understand more. I mean, more working with, especially not just the mortgage, industry, but we work with a lot of financial institutions in general. And you all know that one of the big, probably top 5 areas of concern that come up is compliance, right? How do we make this compliant in the way that we communicate with our clients? And to Taylor's point, I'll just emphasize a little bit more. The TCPA laws have actually been very helpful because from Podium's perspective, we looked at those really closely when we developed our texting platform, and we did it in a way that we're actually meeting those important guidelines and standards or policies that the TCPA has outlined. So one thing to think about this type of outreach, and based on the TCPA's kind of way of definitions, this is considered more informational outreach with the way that you are connecting with existing clients, which means that you can facilitate an invitation to, reach out to a client via text message as long as it's informational in nature. To Taylor's point, a lot of like texting platforms out there, they offer you the ability to just send out mass texts, and that will get red flagged really fast in this space. We've seen it from other vendors. We've seen it from other companies who try to develop a kind of systematic way to send multiple texts. So there's more to talk about, to Taylor's point, but we want to make it clear, guys, this is something that Podium has spent a lot of time focusing on in our texting development, and we can talk more about what we do to keep you aligned with those policies that exist state to state.
Yeah, and then again, if you do want to use text messaging for like a marketing, now I think Eric typed out a good answer to this. So you can kind of mass text to your customers if it's to start a conversation, whereas hey, like
initial
you have this
inquiries,
exactly. So like that's okay, but if you're just trying to use it for like marketing purposes, that is something you have to do, but you can do, but you want to be careful with it because we really don't want to water down this channel, right? It's a really pure and clean channel, and that's the reason those TCPA laws are in place. But if you do like have, an occasional promotion or something like that you do want to market through, you just have to make sure that you have a specific list, right, that people have opted into and they're very aware of it, right? You don't want to have like some automatic opt-in where they have to opt out. They have to knowingly opt into that list, and then you can text those people with marketing. But that's not something we're going to talk about a ton today. We're going to be mostly talking about, the best way to communicate with them on a one-to-one basis.
Right. 100%.
Now, I think we're gonna move on a little bit, but one thing I do want to say. So I feel like I've gotten a lot of messages or questions. Rather say, hey, we want to see a lot about the program itself, like the Podium specific platform for text messaging. We'll talk a little bit about that. This is mostly supposed to be educational, where these are things that you can do on your own, right? These aren't things that you need to pay anyone for, but we're glad to take your money, obviously, right? we're very happy to do that, and I'll let you guys, the way we can do that is we can schedule a demo so you can actually see the product itself, and Trevor will do a good job making sure that you understand that.
Yeah.
And we'll follow up with everyone, after the end of the webinar. But let's go into some more things that you can do on your own, right? Some things that you're probably not doing right now. Okay, so the first thing that you probably should be doing is you need to set up Google Click to Message. So Trevor, can you explain kind of what Google Click to Message is?
So Google Click to Message is somewhat, I wouldn't call it too much of a newer feature, but it came out, I would say roughly 8 months ago. We work closely with Google. They're actually one of our they're one of our largest financial backed companies into Podium as far as investing goes. But what I'll say quickly, guys, is the Google Click to Chat is a really powerful channel that opens up another line of communication for your clients that find you and want to connect with you directly. So it's pretty easy, and it actually works very similar to Facebook Messenger. So if any of you guys have used, like a Facebook Messenger or even communicating through Instagram, this concept is basically the same way that it can be set up, and it's pretty simple. And we can kind of walk you through this at a later date, one-on-one, if you guys need some help here. But just logging into your Google My Business page, selecting the messaging in front of the left menu, and then adding your telephone number to receive text, which, by the way, we're going to talk a little bit more about some best practices there. And then just verify that number with Google. Ideally, guys, this is a powerful resource because this is where arguably 87% of the traffic are going every day to find you guys in one form or another, whether it's through a branch location that you have or your independent, loan officer, Google My Business accounts. This just it's basically putting a leg up on the competition where your clients now have an easier way to directly connect through means of text messaging, because this can actually be facilitated right from their smartphone, which is what most consumers are using in the first place every time they do their due diligence to find a credible loan officer or mortgage lender near them.
Okay, the other reason I'm going to say this is crazy important that you set up is because most people today, right, we have a very short attention span, right?
Yeah.
Like I think today the modern consumer has like a 3 to 5 second attention span, whereas, back in the 80s, it was a 3 to 5 minute, right? So the biggest reason this is crazy important is because people can't remember your phone number, right? Unless they're saving in your phone. And that's probably something they will do once they've already been a converted lead. But the nice thing is this is a way people can find you online, right? So people, if they can't remember where your business is, or if you have a physical location, right? Or if they can't remember, your phone number, contact information, what are they going to do? They're going to Google it, right? And then having that right there in Google, a way that they can text message you directly, now they can save that phone number, right? And this is a way for you to get inbound leads, right? And so in a time where the market's kind of down, this is a way you're going to be able to get more business. It's not in a way to just only satisfy your current customers, but to get more businesses by enabling that click to message. And you want to do this across every platform, right? You want to make sure that your Facebook Messenger is also set up this way, where you can get inbound messages through Facebook. I mean, Facebook is a huge marketplace that people underutilize.
Yeah, and kind of along those lines, guys, where we can help make this more scalable is this is important to understand how Podium will actually look to make your landline a textable number. I think we just saw from that initial survey that a lot of you are already using a form of texting with your personal cell phone. There's not necessarily a lot of negative there, but our goal is to make it more scalable. And so the way to do that is to find a number that we can dedicate as your business line that you're communicating more effectively with your clients with. And you're keeping that separate from what you do on a social aspect every day with your friends and family and that side of things. So it's really easy from our end to make a landline textable. It's also probably a number that your clients may already be familiar with because they have it saved in their phone. So anytime this outreach begins to happen, if you're communicating with a client and it's a simple inquiry like we talked about, they can actually call back on that number, and we can help you facilitate so that that's an easy opportunity to connect with that client. Whether it's over the phone after those initial conversations took place via text. But this is just a way to keep your business more organized in the sense that you're not just dedicating a cell phone or personal number that's not going to be structured. Yeah,
so you really don't want to be putting your cell phone number on that click to message, right? You don't want to be having to use your personal cell phone to text back and forth. It's a lot better to have, your actual business landline textable for a few different reasons other than Trevor's already talked about. Okay, one is for local SEO, right? So SEO, everyone knows that, right? Search engine optimization. That's how people are finding you online, and especially local SEO. Now, that is heavily affected by how you have consistent information across the web on all your online listings, right? So you don't want to have multiple phone numbers out there because that negatively affects that SEO. So having one single phone number, right? And like you said, if people are texting back and forth with you, then they can call that number, right? And not having it be a separate one where you're not able to answer. So having a system that's able to handle that by making your landline textable is just going to make that much easier, and also going to improve your SEO.
And let's go to the next slide. That's like a perfect segue to talk about where some of those channels exist, where you can have this consistency across where these consumers are finding you every day. And even when they're referred to you and they go to you guys directly, you just want that information to be consistent across those places like Taylor mentioned. So your website being, guys, that's a great location. If they go to Google and they end up going to your website, they see the same number that exists, and that number can be made textable right from your website, where they can just text in rather than make the call. especially because normally we're just seeing simple inquiries, which we're going to talk about some of those use cases a little bit later in this presentation. Put them in your email signatures, put them in your business listings, like Taylor mentioned, anywhere during the customer's journey where they can see this easy capability to text you directly. That's going to give you a huge leg up on your competition, because if we did a search, and we do this all the time at Podium, most companies are not taking advantage of putting a textable number in places where your consumers are going every day to find you, like these outlets. The other thing to look at this, guys, is what I always try to point out to a lot of the loan officers I work with is, what can you do to find a better way to open up a direct line of communication with your clients? Well, that is exactly what this is offering you, kind of in building off of what we talked about. This is a direct line. This is another line compared to the other ways you guys communicate, that is a direct line right to that handheld phone that they hold or use 90% of their day that's in their pocket. So just a reminder, guys, wherever you're putting those numbers, wherever we can make this textable, it's just going to give you guys more opportunities to have some leads come in and be able to, basically turn a simple question or inquiry into a new lead.
Yeah, this is really, meant to be a way you can get more leads, like Trevor just said, right? So he covered this slide pretty well. The only thing I'd add, right, is making sure that this one phone number, right, your landline number that you've made textable now, right? And we can talk some ways of how you can make that textable, right? But making sure that's on every single business listing, right? So number one, we want to have on Google, right? We want to have on Facebook, and then some industry specific sites, right? You might have a local, in your local geography, a specific site. Like a lot of people here post things on KSL, right? Like, so having that on KSL, for example, if I lived in Utah, would be a thing I want to do. So you want to do some of your own research, right? And then there are a lot of other sites out there. Just making sure that that's consistent across the web is really going to help you out. And you're going to honestly see more leads coming in, right? So the next kind of thing we want to talk about is how you're going to able, to manage that text conversations with a customer interaction platform. I'll let Trevor take this one.
Yeah. So in terms of, guys, that I've used this a lot, and I apologize, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but scalability is really important. So, for those of you that are using your own kind of personal number to text and communicate with your clients, that's great. And frankly, that's a great starting point. With Podium, we want to find a way to facilitate it so that it can be done in a very scalable, manageable way. So the first thing we look at is getting conversations off of your personal device. So again, we're not trying to undermine that, because again, you guys already clearly know that there's an opportunity with texting. So what we want to do is kind of help with this landline conversion that we can make textable. That's a first step in the right direction to make that more scalable, so that you guys are separating it from your personal devices. The second option is to consolidate those interactions into a single platform. What we find is people will hear a message like this from me and Taylor, and they'll be like, okay, now I'm going to take an action items to go change my Facebook number or enable my Facebook Messenger and Google Chat and all these channels to make textable. But then they run into this scenario where they're getting they're having to kind of manage the conversations on each one of those platforms, where our goal is to basically consolidate that so that those channels of communications are coming into one centralized place where you guys can easily manage them. There's an application device on smartphones nowadays where you can manage conversation. If you're more mobile, you can do it from your desktop. The whole point is we just want to make that all in one place so that it's easy to manage, and that you guys aren't, losing opportunities to hear your client, that, and kind of have that conversation sit out in dead air. So, and there's a lot of notifications that come up with that. So if somebody does reach out to you guys, you can be notified in a way that it's tied to your email address, that it's tied to like the mobile device I mentioned. We can even have you monitor to a Google Chrome extension, which I can get into in a little bit more detail. The last two bullet points, assign conversations to the right individuals. That's going to be a key thing. But I think more importantly, when you get all employees on board to create a cohesive messaging experience, that's something that we have a lot of best practice and recommendations around. We're going to talk about those in a little bit later slide here today. But these are kind of the main bullet points that I would start thinking about as you guys are trying to shift from just your kind of one-to-one personal interaction on your smartphones to something that is more scalable that can manage this better.
Yeah, if you really want to be the office hero, right, for your branch, this is something that you would want to get on ASAP, because think about how we talk about this is a convenience economy, right? The businesses that are winning are the ones that are making it so convenient and easy and stupidly easy, right, for their customers or potential customers to communicate with them, are the ones that are going out, right? So every time you have a barrier, for example, a barrier would be somebody calls in, talks to one person, gets transferred to another person because they find out which geography they're in. Whereas if you could do that right from the beginning, right, you get this text message, right, you can see people's area codes, you know what state they're in, right, and you can directly put that to the right person right away. So they're messaging back and forth with the right originator right from the beginning. Your conversion rates on how many loans you're able to do is going to significantly increase, right, just because you made it so much more convenient for these customers, right? Okay, now we've talked a lot about why obviously text messaging is really important, and hopefully you really understand that by now, right? And a lot of people, I feel like we might have even gone overboard on this, right? Everyone understands it's really important, right? And then we've given you some tips, on ways to get more leads, right? Ways you can be using this text messaging to, actually improve your business. But we're going to talk about now some actual best practices, right? Like, what are some specific ways that you can start text messaging back and forth with your customers? Should we answer some questions though?
Yeah, let's stop here
before we get into this. So let's
definitely.
see here. Eric, do you want to read out some of these questions for us?
Yeah, there were a couple of really good ones that I wanted to highlight for you guys that I was watching as the feed was coming through. Of course, poor Juan keeps asking about cost. I'm sure you guys handle that in the demo, right? But there's a question here about what's better, raw text or graphics and JPEGs, GIFs, that kind of stuff. As far as type of content, what do you find gets the best results?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I can take part of this one. Yeah, so obviously there's not a clear answer on that one. Okay, honestly, they're all really good. It just depends which industry you're in. So for example, like in the mortgage industry, I imagine most of the time it's going to be just normal, like plain text, right? However, for example, I work with a lot of auto services, and sending an image, for example, let's say somebody brings their car into the shop and they have, they're just getting an oil job, but then they're like, oh, this person needs new brakes, and they can send a picture of their brake pads that are metal to metal, right? That's a really good example of somebody using an actual graphic or image right back and forth for text messaging. So if you can think of a good use case, right, where, hey, let's send an actual image or graphic, then go ahead, right? There's plenty of good use cases, but I don't know. Can you think of some specific ones?
We run into a lot of this with different industries, to Taylor's point. I mean, I know this doesn't compare apples to apples, but like in the insurance industry, for example, a lot of them want to take in like a picture of the automobile when like a case was brought up, because they want to be able to see pictures. And texting is super relevant because if they're working with one of their clients, they can send in those pictures directly. Now, in the mortgage space, to Taylor's point, like, those pictures may not make as more sense based on what you guys are dealing with in your day-to-day. But we can do JPEGs, we can do links. We're going to actually show some other ways that you guys can incorporate like other forms of outside of just content in the text, which we're going to talk about in some of these. We've actually got some use case scenarios that we'll go over, which I think will probably bring this to life a little bit better. So before we jump into those, do we want to answer any of these other questions?
Yeah, Eric, do you have any other of these questions you want to ask?
I mean, some of them you've kind of already covered, and I'm guessing you'll go into more depth on, some of the questions. Most of them went around the topic of how do you actually make the landline textable, and I'm sure you guys will get into that when you get a little deeper into the platform itself. Screenshots, some of these are also comments. So yeah, if you guys want to go ahead and go through some of these best practices and tips, that's great, because that's kind of what people have, what is it that we need to be doing with text is the next biggest question.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I could even tell you right now, one really good way, just as far as making your landline textable, you have to use like a service to be able to do that. So using Podium would be the best way, right? That's what I'm going to tell you right now. There's also other ways, like if you go to Twilio is another way to get your landline textable. Okay, so let's go through these use cases. So tip number one, setting appointments and setting appointment reminders, right? Not everything not everyone's going to remember when they have an appointment, right? And no shows waste everyone's time, right? It just honestly makes everything worse. So if you were able to, actually just send an appointment reminder simply saying, hey, we have this thing going on at this time, right? Make sure you show up. People are really grateful,
The idea here, guys, is we want to make these appointment reminders as efficient for you as possible. So part of what Podium's done is we put together an easy way to enable templates that you guys can choose from. And we can actually put in metadata, like including the client's name with like a time slot that you can determine for that appointment. So again, we want to make the follow-up for these appointment reminders. We can do them automatically, but we can also do them manually with these templates. Basically, template's kind of a loose term, guys. What I mean by template is you can create something that's easily, you can pick and choose from. Anytime you got a client where you're doing an auto reminder or you're doing a reminder for, you would just basically select that template and have this opportunity to pull in that client's name where you can begin that conversation early, and it could be a reminder just before you guys meet with them the next day. And again, we've seen the open rate, so we know they're going to see this, and it's more likely that you're going to be able to guarantee that that follow-up appointment for that next day or a couple of days out, depending on when you guys want to facilitate this. There is more to talk about with the way we can automate these reminders, but it's probably going to be a bit more detailed, and we don't want to get too heavy on the functionality that we offer. But definitely the biggest thing here, guys, is just making it more effective, making it so it's convenient for your clients to get back to you rather than sending over an email and hoping they read it before they've got that next appointment to confirm. So,
perfect. Okay, now tip number 2, answer customer product or service questions, right? So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but text messaging really will improve your overall customer satisfaction. And then you can actually turn these online searches into actual customers. So here's an actual use case I'll let Trevor go through.
Yeah, so guys, we see most of the conversion we see with leads happen from just the most simple inquiries you can think of. I mean, we get people that, clients of ours will tell us, hey, we had somebody just come to our Google page. They've got the times that were available today. And they without seeing those or knowing for sure those times, they text in those times just to ask. And we've already fulfilled 2 things. We've opened up a line of communication with the client at that point in time, and we're already in a position to quickly respond and answer their questions and convert that into an actual lead. I mean, we can't tell you. I mean, there was a client that had basically never obtained any leads from Google, and the first time he started using Podium, within I think the first week, he had somebody text in and basically just ask. He said it was a very simple question. He didn't give detail on what. But he's like, that client resulted in, or that lead resulted in a new client just from that simple question and the fact that I was in a position to answer it right away because he preferred to text us. And so, again, this one is another one that comes back on lead generation. We're all about obtaining more leads. And you have to think, guys, how many of your competitors today are providing some type of simple way through Google, through Facebook, through their websites? I know most of you probably have your own websites where you can make those channels textable and make it easier for these clients to inquire about the most simple questions that are going to result in a higher lead generation.
Right now, here's tip number 3. So getting quick signatures. So this is something huge, right, in the mortgage space. There are so many different documents that have to be signed all the time,
Yep.
right? But not all documents necessarily have to be signed in person, right? And this is just going to get you such a quicker turnaround. And you could do this through things such as DocuSign links.
This is kind of where we see the industry going in this direction more and more, where a lot of people are still using email to manage those transactions and documents that go forth. We know it's a lot of back and forth, guys, that you deal with your clients. So to really ease the pain here and make that easy for them, if we're doing it through a textable format and it's something as simple as a link that they click on one time and they're right there to sign or review the agreement, that is helping you in so many ways. One thing that a lot of companies nowadays are trying to focus on is where we can make texting a more transactional experience for people. So instead of making a phone call or looking for a file on an email, we can start to accomplish those transactional opportunities with clients to get signatures and really move forward faster through a means of text. And that's exactly what this example is for. It's quick signatures. It's quick documents that need to be reviewed and signed. And the cool thing is there's actually a tracking application behind this so that we can know like when the client clicked on the link and if the signature was made, so that you guys have some back-end monitoring going on rather than being left in the dark on what's happening when you sent that text message out. So we can get into more details there, but there's a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, again, since, I mean, this is not even just this industry, but this is a nationwide problem with businesses where so many different businesses, they have to send out these signatures through an email. And again, we've talked about how easy it is to get things lost in email, right? So it just makes it that much more convenient. People a lot of times just forget. So putting in a text message just makes it that much easier, right? And then the other reason this is even possible, and the reason we should take advantage of this, is that everyone's on a mobile device these days, right? And so taking advantage of that, hey, your mobile device is like a freaking computer, right in your pocket. And so people are able to do that with that link. So tip number 4, asking for feedback. We'll be pretty brief on this one. Yeah. This is all about NPS, right? That net projection score, like where people would send out that long form survey in the past where they'd say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to, recommend us to your family and friends, right? And this is really important for especially the larger corporations of knowing how they're doing on their net projection score. The basic takeaway from this is that those long form surveys are less and less accurate because, again, people have shorter attention spans, and they're not able to actually do the whole thing. Whereas if you do it through a text message, it's so much easier. It's really the way that this digital age that we're involving in, guys. I worked for a survey technology company for years prior to Podium, or prior to kind of this technology that I'm a part of now. And we've seen less and less response rates on the survey side of things because, frankly, like to Taylor's point, these consumers just aren't willing to take that time. Now, put that into a textable opportunity where you're measuring some good, consistent feedback. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, NPS, or feedback in general, it's the Net Promoter Score. It's on a scale of 0 to 10 rating. And it basically gives you a simple, back and forth to really get to the bottom of, if your clients are really pleased with that relationship and how things are going. If they give you a 9, it's just an opportunity for you to dig deeper and say, hey, what can we do to make that a 10? And again, do it in a way that it's really, really flexible, really easy for the consumer, the client to just, get you that feedback. And then, on the back end, you're going to be able to do a lot more with this data that's specific that you can actually take action on with making improvements. So we have a lot to talk about here. This is just kind of scratching the surface, but the biggest takeaway, if you guys remember anything, is that consumers in today's modern age do not want to go through multiple survey questions. They frankly don't have time or the patience, just like Taylor said. Okay, perfect. Let's keep on going on. All right, so tip number 5, right? Answer questions and solve problems quickly. Not every question or problem really requires a phone call. There's a lot of things that phone calls definitely still are necessary for, but a lot of things that take up a lot of time that they shouldn't aren't necessary through a phone call, right? So texting is just that much easier and more visual than a phone call, right? Like we talked about with images. I think somebody earlier gave us the tip that hey, you can send what their monthly payments would look like, in an image, and that's a great tip. So there's this specific example, Trevor. You can read that out. And guys, it's pretty high level, and I think we've kind of already maybe covered this pretty well, just with these simple inquiries that happen on a regular basis. But it's really just I just feel like I sound like a broken record because it goes back to opening up this line of communication, whether it's on Google, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on your website, or you have clients texting you directly. Those simple questions can easily be answered through a text that's convenient for you and for the client. And so really this is just about improving the overall customer experience, getting that satisfaction level to go up because you're making it more convenient for your client. And then, of course, for some of those initial inquiries that happen when people find you, it's just putting yourself in a better position to respond and turn those into leads. So probably a little bit redundant on this one because we've talked about it already, but let's just jump to the next All right. Tip. So before we go, so that's our 5 tips. We'll have a bonus tip soon, but let's open up that poll question.
Okay, great, guys. As you all know, at Originator Connect Network here, our primary goal is giving you great
So how
value and
urgent is it
information that's going to help you do more. So, guys, whole question here is: after this conversation, audience, how much more important is it to you now to implement a text-based solution for your business? Let us know if this is really top of the radar for you, or if this is something that is still kind of a couple months out. You got other bigger fish to fry first. All right, give them just a few seconds to respond, and then we'll jump to the answers for this one just to kind of see. And then these guys will have some quick bonus tips for you and some easy ways for you to let them know that you want more information about their platform and system. Looks like 83% of the audience, overwhelming 83% of you all decided that this is something you really need to jump on because your customers are expecting it. So, Taylor, hopefully that's good results for you guys, that we got a lot of folks who need some help with getting going with some text messaging for their customers. All right, so you had one more bonus tip you were going to share as far as how to leverage text messaging to get you more business as originators.
Yep. All right, perfect. So let's go to that next bonus tip right here. I just skipped over it a little bit. So inviting your customers to review your business, right? So we've talked about text messaging all day, but text messaging is a good way to get people to leave you online reviews. And online reviews, I can't emphasize enough of how crazy important they are for you growing your business, to getting more inbound leads, to being found online, right? People, that's how they find information online. They're less and less asking their parents, hey, which mortgage company should I be using, right? I mean, that still happens, but most people are going online and doing that local search, and that's heavily impacted by online reviews. And if you're paying for marketing and they somehow find you online, that's the first thing they're going to see. So sending out a text message is going to help that. So a few quick things on why online reviews matter, right? 3.3 is the lowest star rating that somebody would consider engaging with a business, right? 82% of consumers said that the content, not just the star rating, but the actual words within a review convinced them to make a purchase. And this last stat, 93% of consumers said online reviews have made an impact on their purchase decisions. And this we found here at Podium, right? We work a lot with reviews, is that is especially more relevant to businesses that are high involvement, right? So for example, if you're a jeweler, right, that's a high cost, and I bet getting a loan for your home is probably about as involved as it gets, and people really, really care about who they're working with, and that's why they're using these online reviews to make those decisions, right? So how you can send that review invite via text, this is kind of how it looks like through Podium, right? You send out the text invitation, you can have your branding in that MMS image, kind of like we talked about using earlier, saying, hey, thanks for doing business with us today. You usually want to do this after the loan has already closed. People are really happy, right? They're at the top of their game. You're top of mind. And then it just says here, click this link, right? And it takes them straight to where you want them to leave a review, whether it's on Google or Facebook, straight to they don't have to log into anything. It just makes it that much easier. And that's something you can also do through Podium, right?
Yeah. And just maybe one more thing to add to that, guys, is this idea of texting your clients where you're in a position to have that dialogue happening realistic. To Taylor's point, it makes it easy to tee up an opportunity for them to leave a review. And that's why Podium removes those barriers to make that text really easy to obtain some type of 5-star review and get you guys more on the map, because you're doing that every case with these clients that are very pleased in working with you over the time. To kind of sum it up and make things kind of come together, hopefully, it really comes down to these 4 pillars that we really focus on as best practices. So we've kind of talked about this one, but consolidating all of your conversation into a single dashboard, I think we're pretty clear on that. There's different ways that we can dive into more details after this call to show you guys exactly what the functionality technology looks behind accomplishing that. Gain valuable insights into your business operations. Well, that's exactly what this is doing for your business, right? You're getting more feedback from clients that you normally necessarily wouldn't in some cases, and it's because you're making it so convenient. So you're finding out a lot of stuff that you didn't even realize was happening, and now you're putting yourself in a position to get that feedback. Stay connected to improve overall customer satisfaction. We've already talked about that a ton. This is just kind of one of the natural benefits of utilizing texting based on what we know consumers want. So that satisfaction, those NPS scores, those are the kind of things we see a direct correlation from texting to improving goal satisfaction, which results in a higher NPS score if you guys are measuring that today. Utilize pre-made templates to jumpstart the conversations. Make this easy for you guys and for your employees, your staff. If you guys have a front office employee, if you've got additional loan officers under you, or depending on how you guys are all set up, we want to get them behind this because there's multiple ways that they can be involved to help solicit these reviews. Do that through the initial text messaging that we have set up.
All right, we have one last poll question here for everyone that's still on the call. We're running out of time right here, but if you'd like to see a demo, right, of how Podium actually works, how you can streamline your text messaging and actually be able to get more, online reviews, go ahead and fill out this poll question. We'll make sure to reach out to you after the webinar.
Right. And guys, one of the things I know these guys will do, if I can say this, they are a Utah-based company. They're great guys who have a very giving heart. I know that they want to spend some time with you and help educate you on what's going to work best for your system. Take advantage of the opportunity to have this consultation with them and find out how to tailor their system to fit your specific needs. They go from the biggest of the big to the one-man shop independent, and they have a pretty broad spectrum of what they can cover for you guys. So make sure you engage, plug in. For all of you Originator Connect Network members, be watching for upcoming webcasts coming down the pipe. We've got a great lineup for later into November and early December coming for you. Podium hopefully will be back on the platform with us again in the not too distant future. And by the way, don't forget, for on-demand viewers, you have the same opportunity to post your Q&A questions and to respond to all the poll questions as well by interacting with this platform. And these guys, I know, will take the time and energy to reach back out to you and get you the information you need to help you grow your business, because that's everybody's primary goal here, is help you guys do better and get more loans by leveraging these technologies to better perform. Any final thoughts you guys want to share before we close out for the day?
Yeah, we just want to, thank you again, Eric, for having us on. Where hopefully everyone took something away from this that they're going to be able to implement their business today. You already understand, right? Text messaging is really important, and it's something that's hard to manage. So we'd love the opportunity to help you out with that.
Yeah, we know there's a lot of changing things happening in the mortgage space. I mean, rates are going up; it's getting more competitive. So these really are things that we've tracked closely from the what a lot of our clients have found successful and been able to produce. So please just let us know if it's relevant now. It's probably going to be relevant in the future. We're happy to talk to you anytime when you guys are ready to jump on a call and look at things more closely.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks again for attending today's webcast program. It's always a pleasure and honor to work with all of you network members across the country. We hope to see you on future webcast events. And if there's anything you'd like to comment about that you would like to see in future topic areas, things that you're struggling with in your business, take advantage of the opportunity on the survey here in just a second to let us know what you'd like to get more information about. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you on the next one.